The words just hung in the air, a fragile thread of desperation and innocence. They felt so out of place against the cold, polished marble of the skyscraper lobby. "Sir." "Excuse me, sir." The voice was small, hesitant, but it cut right through the noise of ringing phones and hurried footsteps. A man in a suit that cost more than a car stopped, his hand pausing on the gleaming brass door handle. He turned, a mask of mild annoyance on his face, and looked down. There, looking up at him with eyes that held a universe of worry, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her dress was clean but faded, her shoes worn at the toes. She clutched the strap of a small, empty backpack like it was a lifeline. She took a deep breath, the kind you take before you dive into deep water, and made her plea. "I promise to pay when I grow up," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "But my little brother is hungry. Please, can you just buy me a carton of milk?" The man, a millionaire known for his ruthless business sense and his fortress-like privacy, just stood there, frozen. In his world of billion-dollar deals and calculated risks, this was an equation he'd never seen before. A promise from the future, offered as collateral for a carton of milk. He opened his mouth to dismiss her, to call for security, to do what he always did. But for the first time in a very long time, the words just wouldn't come. What he did next, nobody, least of all him, could have ever predicted. It was an act that wouldn't just change her life, but completely shatter his entire world. Section 1, A Tale of Two Worlds. To really get how unlikely this moment was, you have to understand the two worlds that crashed into each other on that polished floor. One was a world of quiet desperation, the other, a world of gilded isolation. The little girl's name was Amara. Her world was a third-floor apartment in a part of the city the tourist maps conveniently forget. It was a world painted in shades of struggle but lit up by the brilliant colors of love. Her mornings didn't start with a gentle alarm, but with the rumble of the early bus and the sound of her mother getting ready for one of her 2 cleaning jobs. Amara was the little guardian of the house, and her main duty was to watch over her 4-year-old brother, Leo. Their home was small and the furniture was secondhand, but you could see her mother's touch everywhere. A row of cheerful, hand-painted stones lined the windowsill. A drawing Amara made of their family, 3 smiling stick figures holding hands, was taped to the fridge. But lately, that fridge door had been opening to emptier and emptier shelves. The end of the month was like a monster that always devoured the food first. Today, it had taken the last of the milk. Amara had watched her little brother cry from hunger, and a fierce, protective feeling ignited inside her. She'd seen the tall, glass building on walks with her mom, a place her mom said was where the money lives. With a courage born of love, she slipped out of the apartment, promising a sleeping Leo she would be right back. She was on a mission. Miles away, and a universe apart, was the world of Mr. Sterling. His name was Arthur, though almost no one called him that. His world was a penthouse that scraped the clouds, a place of silent servants and panoramic views of a city he owned a piece of but didn't feel a part of. His mornings began with stock market reports, his days a blur of boardrooms and conference calls. He was a titan of industry, respected, feared, and profoundly alone. His life was a fortress built of wealth, designed to keep the messiness of the world out. His suits were armor. His handshakes were contracts. His smiles were strategic. He hadn't bought his own groceries in 20 years. He hadn't walked through a neighborhood like Amara's since he was a child himself, a memory he had long since buried. He saw people not as people, but as assets, liabilities, or obstacles. His heart, once capable of empathy, was now a locked room, and he'd thrown away the key. When he looked down at Amara, he wasn't just looking at a poor child, he was looking at a ghost from a life he fought so hard to escape. Section 2, The Moment of Impact. Back in the lobby, the silence stretched on. For Amara, every second felt like an hour. She saw the hesitation in the man's eyes, that flicker of annoyance, and her heart sank. She'd seen that look before. It was the look that made you invisible. She tightened her grip on her backpack, ready to run, the shame of it all burning her cheeks. For Arthur Sterling, the moment was a system crash. His mind, a machine tuned for profit and loss, was struggling to compute. A promise to pay. From a child. It was illogical, financially unsound, and totally absurd. His protocol was simple: ignore, walk away, let security handle it. He was a busy man. He had a meeting. A man like him didn't engage with street children. It was a rule. But then he really looked into her eyes. He saw past the worn dress and the desperate plea. He saw raw, unfiltered sincerity. He saw the fierce pride that made her offer a promise, not just beg for a handout. This wasn't a beggar, this was a small, determined person making a business proposition, the only one she could. Her words, "I promise to pay when I grow up," weren't just a child's fantasy. They were a powerful statement of dignity. A strange feeling pricked at him, something he hadn't felt in years. It was a crack in the fortress. He saw a flash of another little face, another time. A memory of his own mother, telling him that a promise was the most valuable thing a person could give. He'd made so many promises since then. To shareholders, to business partners, but when was the last time he'd made one from the heart? "Milk," he finally said, his voice rusty, like he was using it for the first time. "That's what you need?" Amara nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes, sir. The full-fat kind. It's Leo's favorite." The specificity of it, the full-fat kind, was another small, sharp detail that pierced his armor. This wasn't a generic plea for money. It was a specific mission for someone she loved. Without another word, he turned. But he didn't walk out the door. He walked back toward the elevator, beckoning her with a nod. "Come with me," he said. Amara hesitated for just a heartbeat, a flicker of fear on her face, before her mission for Leo won. She scurried to keep up with his long strides, a tiny boat caught in the wake of an ocean liner, as the elevator doors whispered shut behind them. Section 3, The Unraveling. The elevator ride was silent. Arthur could feel the girl's nervous energy. He was acutely aware of the contrast between his polished Italian shoes and her small, scuffed sneakers. He led her not to his office, but to a private kitchen on the executive floor. The chefs, used to catering to billionaires, just stared as he walked in with the little girl. He pointed to a futuristic-looking refrigerator. "Is this what you're looking for?" Amara's eyes went wide. Inside were dozens of milk cartons, alongside gourmet cheeses and exotic fruits. She nodded mutely, pointing a small finger at a carton of organic whole milk. Arthur took it out, along with another, and placed them in a bag. Then, on an impulse he didn't understand, he started adding more. Bread. Cheese. A whole roasted chicken. Juice boxes. He kept adding things until 2 large grocery bags were full. He knelt down, his expensive trousers creasing. "This should last a few days," he said gruffly. Amara looked at the bags, then back at him, her brow furrowed with a new worry. "But, this is too much. I can't promise to pay for all of this." Arthur looked at her, and for the first time in years, he really smiled. Not a strategic smile, but a real one. "Consider it an advance," he said. "On your promise." He arranged for his personal driver to take her home. As she left, Amara turned and said one last thing. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I won't forget." He watched the car pull away, and the fortress of his life suddenly felt like a prison. The silence of his office wasn't peaceful anymore, it was deafening. Her promise echoed in the empty space. "I promise to pay when I grow up." That night, he couldn't sleep. He stood by his floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city lights. He'd always seen it as his kingdom. Now, for the first time, he saw it as a million tiny homes, each with its own story, its own struggles, its own Amaras. Stories like this one, even though they're fictional, are crafted to grip your heart for a reason. Arthur Sterling, a character in his own real-life drama, was feeling the full force of that. He was being transformed, not by a hostile takeover or a market crash, but by the unwavering integrity of a 7-year-old girl. The next day, he did something he hadn't done in 30 years. He cancelled all his meetings. He had his driver take him to Amara's neighborhood. He saw the systemic issues he'd only ever read about in reports, food insecurity and the harsh reality of child poverty. He saw the economic inequality that divided his city. And he realized that giving 2 bags of groceries was like putting a small bandage on a gaping wound. The shock wasn't that he had helped her. The shock was the profound realization of how little he had actually done, and how much more was needed. Section 4, The True Payment. A week later, Amara's mother, Sarah, received a registered letter. She opened it with trembling hands, fearing the worst. But it was a letter from a newly formed foundation. The Sterling Promise Foundation. It said a full scholarship had been established in Amara's name. It would pay for her entire education, all the way through university. But that was just the beginning. The next day, construction vehicles rumbled into the neighborhood. They didn't head for a new luxury condo site, they headed straight for the neglected park. They began building a brand new playground and community center. A sign was posted out front, funded by the Sterling Promise Foundation. Fulfilling a promise made, and a debt being repaid. A few days later, Arthur Sterling appeared at Amara and Sarah's door. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a simple sweater. He looked nervous. Sarah invited him in, her heart pounding. Arthur knelt down to Amara's level. "Amara," he began, his voice soft. "You made me a promise. You said you would pay me back when you grow up." Amara nodded shyly. "Well," he continued, "I've been thinking about that payment. I don't want your money. I want something much more valuable. I want you to work hard in school. I want you to stay curious and brave. And when you do grow up, and you're successful, I want you to find someone else who needs help, and I want you to help them. That will be your payment to me. Your success, and your kindness. That's the only debt you owe." This was the truly shocking part. It wasn't just charity, it was an act of profound respect. He wasn't a wealthy savior handing out cash. He was framing his help as an investment in her promise, making her an active partner. He was tackling the deeper issues not with a handout, but with opportunity. He saw her dignity, and he honored it in the most powerful way imaginable. Section 5, The Ripple Effect. The changes were immediate. The cloud of constant worry over Amara's home lifted. Sarah was able to leave one of her jobs to spend more time with her children. Leo always had his full-fat milk. Amara dove into her studies, her world expanding with every book she read. The new community center became the heart of the neighborhood. It offered after-school programs, job training, and a community kitchen that ensured no child would have to walk into a skyscraper lobby to ask for milk again. The foundation started offering small business loans to local entrepreneurs, breathing economic life back into the streets. The ripple effect of one small promise was turning into a tidal wave of change. Arthur Sterling was a new man, too. He hadn't just changed her life, she had saved his. He scaled back his role at his company, redirecting his energy into the foundation. His board meetings were now held in the community center he'd built. He found a purpose that all his money could never buy. He learned that true wealth isn't about what you own, but what you give away. Section 6, A Promise Fulfilled. 15 years later. A university auditorium is packed, buzzing with the energy of graduation day. A young woman walks to the podium to give the valedictorian address. She is poised, brilliant, and her eyes shine with the same fierce intelligence they held as a little girl. It's Amara. She looks out at the crowd, her gaze finding her mother, who is weeping with joy. And next to her, a gray-haired Arthur Sterling, beaming with a pride deeper than any business deal he'd ever closed. Every success story has a beginning, Amara began, her voice clear and strong. A single moment that changes everything. My story began with a desperate plea and an impossible promise. I stood before a stranger and promised to pay him back for a carton of milk when I grew up. A murmur went through the crowd. Today, she continued, her voice thick with emotion, I am here to make my first payment. Mr. Sterling taught me that the debt of kindness is not paid back, but paid forward. So, with the first check from the pediatric residency I've just accepted, the Sterling Promise Foundation will be funding a new free clinic in the very neighborhood where I grew up. My payment is my promise, renewed. A promise to my community. A promise to the future. The auditorium erupted in a standing ovation. Arthur Sterling wiped a tear from his eye. The little girl hadn't just kept her promise, she had multiplied its value 1,000-fold. CTA and conclusion. This story, though fictional, resonates so deeply because it touches on fundamental truths. It's a parable for our times, reminding us of the quiet struggles happening all around us, and the huge impact we can have when we truly see another person's humanity. It challenges us to look past the surface, to see the dignity in everyone, and to ask ourselves what we can do to invest in the promises of others. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope is real, and that kindness can start a ripple that changes the world. What promise will you fulfill today?